Let's say you've created duotones and other graphics with this one particular spot color, and then you've used that spot color throughout your InDesign document. But then suddenly you get the word from your client or art director, hold the presses, we need to change the ink. So are you doomed? Do you have to do it all over again? Not at all, because InDesign has a feature called ink aliasing, which lets you map one spot color to another. In this document from the exercise folder, I've used Pantone 279. You can see it down here at the bottom of the swatches panel. And I've applied that to this text, the word roux. In fact, if I double click on this text, it places the cursor inside the word, and you can see in the swatches panel that that Pantone color is selected. This spot color is also being used inside this graphic down here in the lower left corner. That's a placed Illustrator file, but it could be a placed PDF or even a Photoshop using a duotone. The graphic at the top of the screen is a vector file also from Illustrator, but it does not use the spot color. It's just CMYK. So I'm going to zoom into the lower half of this page. I'll hit the escape key to switch to the selection tool, then I'll use my command spacebar or control spacebar trick to zoom in on just the lower half. The ink aliasing feature lives inside a dialog box called the Ink Manager. And there's about 5 different ways to get to the Ink Manager in InDesign, but the most intuitive way is to go to the Swatches panel menu and choose Ink Manager down at the bottom. InDesign power users use the Ink Manager for 3 things primarily. First, it allows you to convert your Pantone colors, your spot colors, into process colors. For example, if you decide you can't print with a spot color, you have to print the whole thing with CMYK, you can do that by opening the Ink Manager and turning on all spots to process. Or if you've used a bunch of spot colors but you only want to convert some of them to process, you can turn that checkbox off and then just click in this little spot color icon to the left of the spot color name. That converts it into a process color. In this case, I want to be using a spot color, so I'm going to leave that turned off. The second thing people do in the Ink Manager is they turn on Use Standard Lab Values for spots. That sounds technical, but what it really means is you get better quality color when you print to a desktop color printer, like an inkjet or a color laser printer. I usually turn that checkbox on and leave it on all the time. But the third feature, and the one that I really want to talk about, is ink aliasing. That's this pop-up menu here. And you can alias this color, this Pantone 279, which is selected in the ink list at the top, to any other process color or spot color. Now, unfortunately, I don't have another spot color to do that to right now, so let's go ahead and click OK and make one. I'll choose New Color Swatch, make this a spot color, and I'm going to choose my color library from this list. I'll choose Pantone Plus Solid Coated. I'm going to use a green color. How about this Pantone 361? I'll just type that 361 into this field, it selects it for me automatically, and I'll click OK. When I click OK, my layout changes. But what happened to my text? Well, when I made that color, that new Pantone 361, InDesign automatically applied it to the object that was selected on my page. That's a feature I really hate. I didn't want it to apply anything. I should have deselected that object first. So in this case, I need to remove that stroke, and I can do that by going up here and setting my stroke back to none. Okay, in my swatches panel, I can see that I have 2 Pantone colors, 279, which is the blue, and 361, which is that green that I just created. So I'm going to go back to my Ink Manager and alias the blue to the green. First, I select the blue Pantone color, and then I choose the green one out of the Ink Alias pop-up menu. When I do that, the blue Pantone color, that 279, grays out in my list to indicate that it's now aliasing to the new color. So when I click OK, InDesign starts to alias the blue to the green. Now it still shows up as blue on screen, but if I make a PDF or if I print, it will show up as green. But it's kind of annoying that I can't see the green on screen, isn't it? Well, it turns out that InDesign has a secret switch, a little way to turn on the ink aliasing so that you can see it on screen. That switch shows up under the View menu, but with an unlikely feature, Overprint Preview. Now, as you probably know, Overprint Preview lets you preview your overprints. You can see which inks are overprinting others. But Overprint Preview does something else. It turns on ink aliasing. It lets you see those colors change on screen. So when I turn that on, the blue turns to green. Not just in text or any objects that I've applied the color to, but in my placed graphics as well, like this Illustrator file down here. And once again, this could be a PDF file or a Photoshop file using a duotone. InDesign is smart enough to display that ink aliasing properly, but only when overprint preview is turned on. Ink aliasing is awesome. It's just one of those incredibly powerful but hidden features that can turn you from a regular InDesign user to a super-powered InDesign maven.